Hello, hello. Welcome to our Sunday night live stream. Hope you're all doing well. It is the last live stream before the summer actually takes off. May? May.
Somehow we're in June already.
Yeah, for sure. We have an exciting guest coming on today. We're going to wait for a few more people to pop in here, but today we are going to be actually having a guest. His name is Marcin. Marcin has a ton of history. What he basically does is he is an aficionado at sourcing private capital on the equity side of things. So he sourced up to $250 million of capital. So we know a lot of our clients who are looking to purchase larger multifamily properties or looking to create larger development projects. That equity piece is one of the most important pieces that kind of go under the radar when it comes to real estate investing. So we wanted to bring Marcin on here. He's primarily out of the States, but he helps a lot of Canadians invest their money in equity for projects. So we're just going to have him come on here in a few minutes. But before we get to that, we just kind of wanted to wait for some people to come in here and join our live stream.
Yeah, whether he's based at the States or whether he's focusing primarily on Canadian investing markets, the ability to build relationships and source capital and put together a pool of private funds, it stays the same, right? Those are traits and characteristics that you guys can take, regardless of where you're investing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, just how he puts together money, private money, some of the tactics that he uses, what he finds works best. Hopefully you guys can take away some talking points from that and use that to be able to build your private pool, moving forward, building some joint venture partnerships, being able to get on these private financing type deals.
For sure, yes. And we're just waiting for him to pop on here really quick. But while we do that, we'll kind of break through what we're going to talk about today. So we're just going to talk about raising capital in general. It's an easy concept to kind of wrap your head around, but when you actually put the pedal to the metal and your feet to the pavement, it can be decently difficult to put yourself in situations where you would have to raise a large amount of capital. How do you do it? What's the most effective way? How do you structure it? There's a handful of different, kind of angles that you would have to attack that. So we're going to go through that. It says won't let him send request. Media team's going to work on that right now. I wonder if we can set this up. Sorry, guys. Trying to set up, have him send a request. It's not working at the moment. Here we go. Invite on our side, guys. Hang tight 1 second. All right, there we go.
Hey,
Marcin, how are you doing today?
excellent. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, you as well. It's a nice day to be sitting outside shooting a video. You can see the sun in the background. It's a nice change. Apparently it was snowing the other day. I didn't see it, but I saw some people post about it, which is, just a typical Ontario type weather. Could be 34 one day and snowing the next day and then back to some other hot weather. So
yeah, so let's get right into it. So tell our audience a little bit about where you're from, what you're doing, and we'll get right into it. So yeah, where are you right now?
Toronto,
So
Canada. Yeah, it's right now. It's funny. So I'm listening to you guys. I lived in Alberta for quite a while. My fiance and I still go there a few months a year, and it's funny because we get snow out there in June, July. So
wow.
This is a treat over here, right? So, yeah, I guess a little bit about myself. I've been in private equity for 15 years. I started out in real estate when I was 21. Read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just like everyone else. Thought to myself, you know what, I could do that. And then, bought a house in Oakville, Ontario at the time, $220,000, rented it out. Realtor told me I'd get $3,000 a month for it, rent. This was 15 years ago. So looked good on a pro forma, bought the property, didn't think of it. And, I realized at that point that sometimes people tell you stuff and, rented it out. So I learned what negative cash flow was real quick.
It's funny when a realtor tells you what it's going to be rent for, and then when it actually rents for, two different things. And what unfortunately happens after you buy the property.
Yeah, my interest rate on my property, I remember it was like 6.85% or something like that.
Oh man,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And what type of lender was that with?
Oh, it was one of the banks. It was just one of the regular banks. It was just a normal, conventional, I think we put 10 or 15% down at the time. And yeah, but we had 30-year AMs back then.
Yep.
That kind of saved my bacon a little bit, but my payment was still like, it was insane. I think it was like $2,800 a month back then.
That's wild.
Yeah, so the low interest rate environment now, a lot of people kind of forget that was that was normal back then. We had people saying that under 2% is a high rate now, and I think the world's gonna get a little bit of awakening when rates start to go back up, but it's hard to imagine that people did thrive and people did find ways to find solutions in markets that did have decently high interest rates.
Yeah, yeah. So let me finish the story. So I bought the house, rented it out. Rent, I think, was $2,200. Mortgage, property taxes, insurance. I think I was feeding this thing like $800 or $1,000 a month. And for a 21-year-old, kid back then, I was still in school. It was a lot of money. Like, it was a lot of money. So we ended up, what did we do? We ended up renovating it, sold it a year and a half later, and actually accepted a job with a private equity firm out west. To do real estate and large multifamily, commercial, land syndications. And I'm glad I did it, but I'll tell you what, guys, I wish I held on to that house because I sold it for $275. That thing is probably worth 1.2, 1.3. It was in Glen Abbey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Next 2020.
Well, you know what? As part of the thing that I was wanting to talk to you guys is that I didn't understand what I had, and I didn't have a appreciation for building that long-term perspective, and I didn't know how to raise money because, see, I was young, I was 21 years old, I needed the cash, I was moving, so I just sold it because that's what you do. And of course, oh yeah, sell it 100%, pay me my commission.
Yeah.
Do you know how much money you get in the market right now for this house?
Great time to sell. Great time.
Yeah, best time to sell.
Yeah.
So sold, pocketed 30, 40 grand, whatever it was. It was good. It was great. But, today that would have been easily an extra $1.2 million. So,
Yeah.
The great thing about obviously Ontario real estate is the year-over-year solid appreciation that we've seen. And we've seen a few dips along the way in the market, but year-over-year, there probably isn't a better compounding investment that's existed in the last 2 or 3 decades than Ontario real estate, especially Toronto, where you're purchasing. I don't want to get too far on a tangent here, but we talk to clients every single day about, is the market going to fall? Is the market going to collapse? It's like, I don't foresee it happening anytime soon. I think obviously you see markets soften a little bit when you see, appreciation happen at a very quick, fast rate, but I don't foresee the market falling out underneath this. But back to you, in regards to raising capital. So a lot of investors that we deal with, we deal a lot with the debt side, as we were talking about a little bit before our show. But our job is specifically to help people find debt, and that debt, whether it's expensive, whether it's conventional, whether it's with a bank, or any lender in between, depending on your project. The most important aspect that kind of goes under the radar here is the equity or the down payment. So how do you come up with that? And a lot of people can't wrap their heads around it. There's a handful of different ways to do it, whether it is finding investors to come with you on a project, JVing, finding private, unsecured money. There's lots of different ways to do it. But tell us a little bit about how you obviously leveraged your experience with your job out west to go find that private capital, and then what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. So I worked with a private equity firm for just over 2 years, and I'd sourced about 25 million in equity for them at that time. And you guys are finance guys. 25 million in equity gets you probably $75 million in assets, so or more. And I worked there. It was more of a family type of business, and once I realized that I had the skill set, but I was never going to be a partner in that company. I ended up breaking out on my own, and took really good experiences with me, and then started buying smaller multifamily, single family homes. Now remember, I was 24 I think at the time when I broke out on my own. So the idea of me taking down a 200 unit building was not within my mental
Mm-hmm.
It just, you know, like I barely had my driver's license for, you know, how buying a big apartment building was just beyond me. So it's funny. So at the time, so our firm was in Alberta, and we had distribution channels on the equity side all throughout the country. And part of my job was to travel the country, work with the local teams and local investors. And I really became enamored with a province and town called Winnipeg in Manitoba. And, you know, back in 2010, when I ended up actually moving, leaving the private equity firm, we just went on a rampage, man. We started buying duplexes and triplexes. We were paying, I was buying duplexes for $120,000 to $180,000, like for both sides. And rents were, you know, between $900 and $1,200 a side. We were splitting utilities. We were, you know, all the value add stuff, increasing the after repair value, just, you know, the Burr model, like it was just on steroids, right? As far as how we funded those deals, maybe this will kind of bring it into, you know, initially my sophistication was, well, I mean, I just kept it simple. You do joint ventures, you maybe get some hard money, some second mortgages behind, you know, behind the property. And that strategy works really well for the single family, maybe the duplexes, triplexes. But then, as you guys know, when you go further into the capital stack and you want to buy a 20 unit, 30 unit, 40 unit building, a bank or a financing company typically wants to see a very specific package put together, like a really, and, you know, at the time, I still, I played small because to me, it was familiar. It was easy is the wrong word, but it was, I think familiar is probably the best way to put it. And, you know, it took me years after that to finally figure out how to go to that next level. And, you know, I then had partners. We then started doing commercial 2012, 2013. We then put together a limited partnership. So we did a syndication cross-border down to the US. So if you guys remember, after the US crashed, 2011, 2012, people were kind of going down there picking up the pieces. Canadians were flying down to Florida, Arizona, and buying properties for, you know, a discount, first of all, but then our dollar was also par, or, you know, kind of in that range. So, you know, we went down, we did about a $12 million equity raise in Canada, which was almost basically 12 million in the US. And then we started buying strip malls in Arizona. And it was commercial, triple net leases, different covenants, different requirements. You know, for those of you who understand, we were buying buildings that were 30% vacant at an 8 cap on the remainder of the net operating income in the building.
Wow.
Yeah. So we looked like geniuses there. Probably also bought in Alberta at the same time. And of course, oil and gas took a big dump a year after. So then we looked really stupid there. Right? So, but the point is that there was no way to have been able to do that or marshal that kind of capital to be able to buy the volume of things we bought if we were just mucking around with joint ventures, you know, like those are all good tools, but eventually you need, if you're trying to go beyond, you know, just buying 1 or 2 properties, whatever it is, you need to then step up and understand that side of the business.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you hear different investors in different aspects of their investing career, and you know, it's always the same concept. It's, you know, I couldn't imagine how it gets where I am now, but I did get there. So it's always about taking that leap and moving on to, you know, bigger and better things. But you know, that leap is never comfortable. Like it's never a comfortable thing to do. It's always like, oh man, like this is, you know, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And you take the action to move forward. So, you know, you have somebody like yourself who knows how to do it. You know, Aaron and I, we spend all day sourcing money for our clients, and you know, there are a handful of different ways you can do it, whether it's private investors who are just very wealthy, or, you know, institutional and private investors who want to put capital in the market. But for somebody who is just starting out, or somebody who's looking to take their portfolio from duplexes and triplexes to maybe 20, 30, 40 unit building, how does somebody go about and do that? Or like, what are some tips and tricks that you would give somebody who just wants to, you know, start maybe trying to find somebody to partner with, or try to do that equity raise by themselves?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I mean, the first thing that somebody needs to do, in my opinion, is really get clear and focused on what their goal is on the investment side. So you look at private equity firms, you look at the large institutional investors, they all have something called an investment thesis. So in other words, they have a very clear focus on what they're doing with their money. And the reason why that investment thesis is so important is because don't forget, they're in the money business. They're out raising money too, except they're not raising 100 grand at a time. They're raising 100 million at a time from pensions, from institutional investors, whatever it is. And the baseline that they're starting their conversation from is, here's the type of opportunity, here are the markets, here's the team, they look at it like a concept first and then drill down into the granular second. So the reason why I'm sharing that with you guys is if you've ever met somebody, and you guys probably have this with some of your clients, where everything's shiny, they go after it. So, hey, there's a duplex. Hey, there's a conversion. Hey, I can wholesale that deal. Hey, you can't raise money when you're scattered, because investors are going to look at you and go, man, I don't know what you're doing. Oh, and by the way, I'm also starting this online store, and hey, you should buy some. And you know what? My cousin has this car wash, and the problem is that people have too many things going on, and they don't have a clear investment thesis. The people that I, whether they're writing a check for $50,000 or $1 million, they have a certain level of appreciation for business and money, and they understand when somebody is just shiny ball syndrome. So if you as an investor have clarity on what you want to do, that's your first step, because you need to be crystal clear. Because if you're not clear, why should an investor even engage in a conversation with you? They're not interested in your journey. They just want to get a return.
Yeah.
So step one, to answer your question directly, get clear on your investment thesis. What do you actually want to do? That's the first thing.
I totally agree. I mean, this is something that I have, a conversation I have all the time with newer investors is, where do you want to go with this? Start right from the beginning. Do you want to look at getting into flips, or, or something immediately that's going to, produce you immediate return and start building your capital stack? Or do you want to get into something that has cash flow? Do you want to get into something that has appreciation gain over the long run? All three of those are going to have a slightly different pathway in terms of type of financing, how you're going to get there, who you're going to want to partner with. For someone who's looking to source capital, you want to be attracted to someone who has the money, and maybe you have something additional. Maybe you're a contractor. Maybe you have experience with your hands and you're able to shave off some of the cost of labor and stuff like that. Put together a resume, essentially, of yourself, who you are and what you're looking to do, and show that to someone. Show them that you kind of have your stuff together and you're in the mindset of you know what you're doing and you're on that path to get it done. Like you said, if as an investor who has money, the last thing you want to do is give that money to someone who is so unfocused or just so sporadic and jumping around from, I want to do flips. You know what? Actually, I was talking to someone, they're doing cash flow. Let's do cash flow this week. Or you know what? The market's hot. Let's actually try to do get in some long-term buy and holds, and I want to get that appreciation in the long run. The guys with the money aren't going to risk that. They want you to know what you're doing. They want you to have a game plan. So having that ready from the get-go, sit down, think about it, lay out all the pros and cons, and which one do you want to go with? Make that decision, and that's going to help you attract money. People aren't attracted to people who are running all over the place and don't have any idea what they're looking to do.
Yeah, and I think investors, like most investors, forget that the amount of federally regulated institutional exposure to real estate is astronomical in Canada. Like the mortgage investment corporations that you could invest in that do it professionally for a living can offer you almost guaranteed returns on certain types of assets. So your value proposition that you're going to be out in the market, offering to people needs to be dialed in. You need to know exactly what your numbers look like. You need to know what your ROI is going to look like. Your exit strategy, your capital. How are you going to execute on this? So, how do you create an investor-friendly deal? And taking a look at the things to consider on those deals, like when you're structuring deals, what things do you consider when you're looking to structure a deal and put it into the market?
Well, so you take, for example, I guess the last acquisition we just made, because it's fresh in my mind, we bought 178 units in Memphis, Tennessee, and it's a value add play. We paid, you guys are going to laugh, we paid $4 million for 178 units.
What? That's crazy. That's wild.
Well, hold on. I got to put about 2 mil USD into Renos to bring this whole thing back up to snuff. But if you then take, I forget what the NOI is going to be on a stabilized basis. But even if you cap that at a 7.25, it's a $12 million asset. So, you just can't do that in Canada. I mean, I haven't found that in Canada anywhere, unless we set up some tents in a campsite, or I don't know, rent it out. I
Sorry, yeah. Airbnb those suckers out.
yeah. Well, so to answer your question directly, I think one of the most important things with the deal is you need to be able to explain your deal to an investor in 30 seconds or less, and if you can't, you don't understand it. And it's got to be real simple. Like I just told you guys, 178 units. I paid X. It's going to be Y. I need to put X into dirt, and that's what it's going to be. Like that's a pretty simple story, right? Now, if you want to dig in, and most people, when they present themselves to an investor, you have to be able to break it down to very broad conceptual reference points that somebody can relate to something else. Like when I talked to some of my buddies that invested with me on this project, my literally pitch to them was, so you can buy 2 houses in Toronto, or you can buy 178 units with me. What do you want to do? And then they just started laughing, right? So it's just, but that's one thing. Now on the structuring side, so there's a few things. Number one, you have to build in the reporting discipline on the financial reporting and the metric side. So you have to be prepared to report on a consistent basis. So there's a discipline that has to get built in there. And this is true whether you have a duplex or 200 units or whatever it is. You have to build in that mindset of accountability, even if it is to yourself, because good investors are going to ask you certain things that are going to be very revealing in terms of how you view business, or worse, if you see yourself as a business or just somebody trying to do deals, because they're not looking to partner with somebody who just wants to sell them something. They're looking for some substance, like an actual structured approach, right? So risk mitigation for me is number one. I look at any deal with, okay, what is the worst case going into this thing? And then from there, I build upside. So I start with, how do I get return of capital rather than return on capital? That's where I start. So for me, that's my starting point. And then to answer your question, it's a function of, okay, so what are the safeguards on the rebuilds? So what are the assumptions? You want to make sure, for example, your pro formas, if you're using numbers that have been, perfected just to make things look pretty as a starting point, that's a big no-no, right?
Yeah.
Another thing is you look at the distribution, distributable cash. So where does that flow? So in my case, for any of the deals I've done, we always do first distributable cash goes to investors until they hit a high watermark. Various deals, it could be 6, 7, 8%. And then after that, you do a split, whether it's 70-30, 50-50, whatever you've got going on, you do that. The other thing is when you have a disposition or a refinancing, what happens with the cash? And the right way I think to do it is to give the investor the money back first before you participate in profit. That's another way to structure an investor-friendly deal. Caps on fees, disclosure fees. There's depending on the type of investors you're raising money for, you may be required or obligated to provide third-party financials. So whether they're you want to avoid, not that you're hiding anything, but audited financials are hella expensive. They're incredibly expensive. But even if you could do in Canada, review engagement REs, or you can do, at the very least, do NTRs. So
even review engagements are, they take some time and they're quite expensive to have your lawyer go. So your accountant go and review those numbers.
Yeah. So for the investor-friendly side, look. So this is maybe my bias coming out, but in my opinion, if someone is going to do debt, whatever they can get in equity, in my opinion, needs to be close to double or more of what they would get as debt. And that's just my personal bias. That's sort of a rule of thumb I have. So as an example, if someone's going to come in and be debt on a property, and I'm not talking about short-term hard money lending, I'm talking about longer term.
Yeah.
Your paper is at 5 or 6%. On the equity side, you better be 15, 20%. Because otherwise, what's the point? Like, why should I take disproportionate risk relative to the return?
Completely agree. A lot of the short-term debt that we get obviously isn't 5 or 6%, but we're seeing people structure, equity, short-term equity projects like this. Sometimes the equity position's a little bit higher, but the term of which the debt is lower, or we can be a little bit more flexible. So when somebody's structuring a deal, they first need to understand that there isn't one specific way to structure a deal. When you're going to structure a deal based off of the investor that you have, and then you're going to have to figure out, obviously, the investor's needs, their wants, their propensity to risk. How much do they want to get paid monthly? Do they want to get paid at the end? Do they want to get, do they want cash flow? Why are they investing, first of all? And then how do you go about paying that investor back? And that's really the most important part. All you're doing is really just finding a solution to that investor's need or want for their money. And as long as you can facilitate that, whether that is a large multifamily deal or a construction deal or something in between, we find that a lot of success happens when the right investor meets the right developer or the right real estate investments company out there. We've had a lot of clients who have partnered with people who already own assets and who have just developed those assets and created the relationship that way. But we also have people who do what you do, who go out into the market and find private money, whether that is hard money for a short period of time or a longer period of time, who just want a long-term exposure to the market. For people who are watching, it's really important to understand that there isn't a single correct way to structure a deal. It's just creating the deal to work for both parties. And sometimes you're not going to make ends meet at the end of the day. Like if there's an investor who has an idea of what they think they should have, and then you have a deal of you can only give this much. Don't give up your deal because this person needs more. There's always more money out there. There's always somebody who's going to be able to help you with the solution.
Yeah, I think just to jump in there quick, that it pertains to just kind of what we were talking about earlier. Your job as the investor sourcing capital doesn't end with the initial strategy. Having a good exit strategy is going to be just as important for an investor who's coming on, because that plays to how are they going to get their money back? What are we looking at down the road? Is this takeout? Is it a sale? Having a good strategy in place. Talk to a mortgage broker beforehand. Hey, what's the average cap you're seeing in this area? Let's have a few different examples. Where do we need to be at gross revenue wise? What does that look like? What does that give us for loan to value? As you mentioned, there's some deals that we've seen where if you have an investor come on with that equity, you may not be getting any equity back on that first refinance. You might be in it for a little bit longer play, but giving away that equity, and we got another viewer, it's awesome. Being able to give away that equity, that gets you into the deal, and thinking long term, what does that do for you? Yeah. And then you have to be okay with that. You can't all be about short term gain, because that might scare away a lot of people, and that might close a lot of doors for you.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, look, there is no one size fits all. Sometimes it makes sense to
chilling, enjoying the sun.
Yeah, that's the spot. So
I love it.
Look, sometimes it makes sense to get debt, second, hard money lenders, second mortgages, and sometimes it makes sense to get equity. But and like you guys said, there is no one right answer, because there's a lot of circumstances where, yeah, it makes sense to get some short-term debt for a little bit as you work your way through the burr. But there's also other times, I can tell you right now, the biggest issue I see with real estate investors is they're undercapitalized. And I don't mean that from a access to liquidity standpoint. I mean an access to equity side, because they find a strategy, they figure out how to go out and get the hard money or get the short-term debt, and they lean on that as the go-to. And the problem is that you have a scenario where, whether it depends on how levered you are, whether it's a move in interest rates, move in market sentiment, whatever it is, and all of a sudden all that debt out there wants to come home. That's when you need that equity as a backfill. So, on the commercial side, I can tell you with multifamily, some of my peers go up to 75, 85% on the debt. Call me conservative. if I can clip a good coupon at 65, 70%, I'm there all day on the LTV side, because those market fluctuations, those swings are just, they're heavy, and it can have a massive.
And you know that right there is the difference, though. Like that is the difference between somebody who needs to get into a project and somebody who has the tools to be able to not take high leverage.
Yeah.
You know, if you're okay with sharing or giving up a portion of your equity to not be leveraged, you know, you have to look at market cycles too. Like, what's going to happen when interest rates go up, or your variable rate goes up? If you're with like a conventional commercial lender, and your total revenue in the property no longer covers your debt. You know, that when you're with a financial institution, you have a minimum debt service coverage ratio you need to be at. You know, and being able to meet those ratios, or like not being too levered to begin with, is super important. And the whole topic about raising equity is a reasonably difficult topic, because a lot of people just think it's impossible to get, or like it's very hard, or someone's going to take advantage of you if you do bring them a deal. But that's not the case. I think this conversation needs to happen a lot more in our community, because you know, finding the right investors or finding the right people to partner with on deals is going to allow you to 10x what you're doing instead of being over leveraged, which is probably the most underrated conversation that isn't happening at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, and on the equity side, I can tell you right now that once you have equity investors that are participating, they have a different mindset than hard money lenders. And it doesn't mean that the hard money lenders are nefarious and trying to take advantage of you. They just have a different goal. They have a different objective. They're not there for a long time. They're there for a good time. And you got to pay them monthly, quarterly, whatever it is. You know, the paper's due, take me out. And that's the only interest. Whereas an equity investor wants to see you develop the property, business. They want to develop personally. They're invested in you. It is the most intimate form of investment, and it's almost flattering if you have people that are willing to be equity investors in your project. Yeah. You know, I can tell you right now, I've taken equity from people that I probably could have got better terms elsewhere, but there were certain people I wanted involved with what I do. You know, whether it's former managing partners of certain companies or law firms or whatever it is, there's certain humans I want in my world, because there's a lot of power in being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, so here's what I'm dealing with. What do you think? You know, send me a bill as a lawyer or whoever, because they're involved in the success of the business. That goes for building an operating company. You have a property management company, you know, a real estate brokerage, whatever it is. There is no, you know, within reason, you don't want to give away 80% of your ownership, but having a few people strategically involved is, especially in those earlier days, is incredibly valuable.
Completely agree. And one thing I want to touch on what's really important here is, you know, we sometimes see people who look to structure deals with none of their money in the deal. So they'll be like, guys, this deal is the best deal you've ever seen. I need somebody to come in, give me 25%. I'm not putting any of my money in because I brought the deal. I just want you to put all your money in. You know, I don't see a lot of success coming from, or at least like a lot of investors flocking to those specific deals. You have to believe in your deal, and you have to have some of your own skin in the game to be able to care about that deal. You know, obviously some of them get done. If it's a good deal, somebody will jump on it. But you know, a lot of investors want to see that you want to be in the deal. If you're passionate about your deal and you want to fund that deal, having some of your own capital in that deal is going to help push everything along.
Yeah, and I'm sure the equity lenders take a look at it from the exact same risk that a hard money lender looks at from the other side. You know, as an investor, if this JV partner has none of his own cash involved in raising all of my funds, you know, how much faith do I have in him that he's going to stay, stay involved in the project when things get tough? Is he going to walk away because he has nothing invested and it's all my money? Or, you know, has he put even just 5% in, as much as he could afford, and he was honest about it up front, but at least I know he's invested in the project. He's going to grind through the hard parts and make sure that we come out with a successful project in the end.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you on the institutional side, they typically want to see a 5% commitment from the GP on the equity. Also, I guess it depends on who's covenanting the property, because I mean, on the institutional side, who's guaranteeing it? I can tell you that LP investors typically, well, they don't guarantee the debt on the institutional side. But when you bring it down to, hey, we're buying this triplex, we're going into it together, you know, we're both signing for the mortgage, then yeah, you definitely want to make sure that both parties are committed and involved. And you know, you also have to remember that there's a reputational element there for the individual, right? So if you're equity, you've got a reputational component there personally. So you've got to be, you know, committed and engaged, and obviously money definitely dictates a fair bit of that. But above and beyond that, you know, a lot of people, if you want to do this for a long time, your reputation is ultimately the most valuable part of the whole thing. I did want to share something with you guys, because I know it's Sunday, and for those of you who are really trying to think about, okay, so how do I go out and actually go raise some money? And again, you know, lawyers, accountants, make sure you have things figured out right. But I've got I created an acronym called EASY, and the EASY stands for exclusivity, abundance, scarcity in your allocation. And if you guys give me a minute, I'll walk you through it, because on the equity side, it's essentially the formula that I use to today when I work with my investors. So the E, the exclusivity, talks about your deal. So in other words, you take my last deal that we did, 72 units, Memphis, that was one exclusivity that we tied it up for, you know, X amount of dollars. The fact that there was only 200 units left, 200 buildings left in the city that are in that value add category, means that the supply is dwindling down. So there's only so many value adds. So those two things were very big components of clarifying that my deal is exclusive and valuable. And then I looked at the replacement cost versus the building cost. So there's a lot of value there. The second part, which is I got the whole family here now.
Yeah, they're just out there getting ready for dinner, buddy. It's them telling you to hurry up.
I told you, barbecue, we got everything going on. You know, he's paying attention. So pardon me, the A is for abundance. So in other words, the biggest, oh yeah? Okay, you saw mom.
See how it is.
The second part, he saw the meat. That's what happened. So the second part is abundance. Now, the biggest issue people have when they're looking to raise equity is they don't have an abundance of people that are interested. Now, you guys take care of that problem for them on the finance side, because as a mortgage broker, you go out and you shop the deal, and you have an abundance of lenders you deal with, so you address that for them. On the equity side, they haven't gone out to test the market to figure out how many people are out there that are interested. So making sure you have an abundance of people that are interested in your concept is incredibly important. And it could be as simple as you're talking to your prospective investor or somebody you know, and you say, hey, I'm working on this deal. If it comes through, did you want me to let you know about it? They say yes. Great. So now you have 5, 6, 20, 30 people to talk to that are interested. The S is the scarcity. So in other words, there's only so much allocation to buy the building. You only need $300,000. You only need $3 million. And then you go back to, I have 50 people to talk to. I have 5 people to talk to. And then, you know, this deal is the deal, and here's why. And then the why is your allocation. So in other words, I always say to my friends or investors, if this made sense for you and it passed your due diligence, what kind of allocation would you want in this deal? And it's a no pressure way. And then you apply those 4 pillars, and very quickly you work through your Rolodex and you figure out who's interested, under what terms, and then you can move things forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think I hear a lot of a lot of little tips like that, where some of them don't directly rely or like relate to that field or that product that you're looking for. But I think those are 4 super key points. Exclusivity for sure. Are you buying a single family home that anyone can go out there and purchase and do their own renovating, or like do you have a niche building that you're not going to come across on very often? You want to generate some excitement around your product. In terms of building that network and, like you said, building your brand as someone, are you someone who just continuously brings these you know, these 1 and 2 buildings that anyone could go there on the MLS and find. Anyone could go out into a private chat forum and find someone trying to sell off a single family property. Or, you know, do you have your own little creative way that you did the work, that you found it out? You built some relationships with these realtors or with some wholesalers, and you know, you put the work in, and now you're getting these exclusive products.
Yeah.
If you're that guy who has that, that is automatically going to start drawing money your way, because people are attracted to that. People aren't attracted to stuff that they can sit down and find within 5 seconds, or, you know, they probably have a handful of people already bringing these deals on a continuous basis.
Yeah.
Bring them something nice and juicy, something that they don't see very often, and you're going to create some excitement, and that money's going to come back to you. You're going to have people reaching out, hey, remember that deal we did? Do you have anything else like that? Like, you know, they're going to want to invest in those deals. I like that. It's a great little analogy.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and something else that your viewers and anyone listening is paying attention to, you might get the comment from somebody, if they're looking on the equity side, they might make the comment, well, why don't I just do my own deal? And that's something that comes across, you know, your plate potentially every day. And I say to whoever it is I'm dealing with, I said, yeah, absolutely. You can definitely get into real estate. If you don't mind me asking, do you want to be invested in real estate, or do you want to be a professional real estate investor?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another very important distinguishing question, because I can't tell you how many people say to me, because the kind of checks I'm picking up, guys can buy these entire buildings themselves. Like, they're just like,
Mm-hmm.
one of these guys could have easily bought this last building we bought on his own. And he actually said to me, he goes, well, why do I need you? And I just laughed. I go, that's funny. Ha, ha, ha. So tell me about how you're going to manage X, Y, Z. And he was just messing with me. But the point, but there's sincerity in that comment, right? So,
Yeah.
And if someone tells you, especially on the equity side, why don't I just do my own deal? Like you just said, with the deal being exclusive and you having something they don't have, combined with clarifying that they want to be invested in real estate, they don't actually be a real estate investor. That again will give you one step further down the path to actually getting that equity commitment.
Agreed. Totally.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I actually just saw one of our past clients, Zeshan, here, was talking about how you have an Unreal course for specifically teaching people how to do this. How often do you run this course? And if somebody wanted to take a look into this, how would they go about reaching out to you?
Yeah, so I mentioned, I might have mentioned, or actually no, I mentioned to Peter when I was talking to him earlier. I ran a How to Raise Capital Mastermind a few weeks ago. I was expecting, it was the first time I'd done it. I thought we'd have about 12 people. We had about 50 there, which was great. I'm going to do another one in July. It's on my website. People can check it out there if they want. But it was interesting because I thought that the mastermind would be enough. But as I put the mastermind together, I realized that there's no way I could cram all this stuff into people's heads in one day. So I actually ended up putting together a master course. And that's what Z was talking about. We actually have a master course on the website. People can pick it up. It's a few bucks, but honestly, if you're going to raise equity, you know, you can bang your head on the wall and figure it out yourself, or you can just, you know, learn from me banging on my head on the wall for the last 15 years. So
I agree that, you know, like, do you want to be someone who hasn't put any money into making themselves better, and you're trying to sell, you know, again, you're selling yourself when you're looking for that equity. So, you know, are you an empty shell, or are you a person full of knowledge and you've done the research? You know, who would you want to invest in if you had the capital, right? So pretty easy decision, I think.
Completely agree. I'm a big fan of learning from other people's other people's experience. You know, we only have so many hours a day, guys. Be really, really great at what you do, and then hire people to be great at what they do and learn from what they do. I think there isn't a better way or a faster way to create success than finding other people who are professionals at what they do and learning exactly how they do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing I want to jump back on, I know you got to go in here at some point, but you were talking about just some documents and notice to readers and stuff like that. And for those who are looking at that long-term type project, buy and hold, and your eventual goal is to refinance or even to sell, I'm going to put them both in there. From the mortgage broker side, one of the things that we ask for on every deal is, show me the financials of the property. I don't need, you know, your scribble on a napkin saying, like, here's my rent roll and here's what my expenses are. Show me something professional. Take the time. You know, you got some laundry money coming in, put that on a financial assessment. That's going to make it way easier to be able to use that moving forward. You got some parking income coming in. Again, put that on a financial statement. The more things that I have that create a professional portfolio from a borrower standpoint, the easier it is to get financing, the easier it is to get you and your partner out, your partner paid. And again, if you're sloppy, if things are stressful, these people aren't going to want to reinvest with you. But if it's a simple process and you have your crap together, people are going to be more likely to come back to you. This guy knows what he's doing, had a great process. We were in and out. I was hardly involved. That's the kind of stuff that they remember and they look for in an investor.
Yep, you're bang on. I mean, you think about today, you can literally go on your iPhone and you can invest in Bitcoin or RBC bank stock, and you can do it like this. And people are so spoiled with the accessibility things, and no one's saying you have to operate at that level and have your own all that stuff, but people are used to having frictionless decision-making capacity. And if you make it difficult for an investor, whether it's reporting, providing financials, whatever it is that you're doing, if you make things friction, if you create friction in the transaction, when they get that check back from that first deal, it's not coming back to you again because they don't, they just don't want
you become a liability if you start creating friction in a deal, right? So, too much friction, hey, now you're having issues getting out, and there could be, who knows what kind of problems they could arise in that transaction. So, just be smooth, be frictionless.
Yeah. 100%. It's look, I mean, their guys are spoiled because they have people like you on the finance side, and you guys are, doing a great job getting, running that competitive bid and doing all those things on that side. But the limitation that your clients have is they don't have somebody like an equity broker on the other side. And, that falls on you as the entrepreneur. And that is a skill set. That is, I've literally spent 15 years perfecting. I think to myself every day, you just learn different lessons, and it's a process that takes time, but you always have to put yourself in the other person's position. And, one of the other things I'll share with the audience here is, if you have 10 units, pay attention to people that understand and look at their processes, look at their procedures. If you have a couple hundred units, look at people that have a couple thousand units, and see how they operate. Like, I'll give you an example. I was on the call with a equity manager. He did $5 billion in equity placements in real estate globally over the last 30 years. You know what he said to me? He goes, "You're too small for me."
Yeah, it's
he knows the pond he fishes in, I guess.
Yeah.
But what? No disrespect, whether you have a couple hundred or a couple thousand units, to operate at that tens of thousands of units level, you have to have the systems, the processes, you have to have a sophistication to understand even what you guys just said with the financial statements. Even understanding the difference between an NTR and an RE and audited financials. Those different components are going to make a lifetime of a difference for you. And then, if you look at, I have friends who own hundreds of doors, but they've got JV partners coming out of their ears and they've got stuff everywhere. And I'm just like, my God, how do you keep this straight? And it's investors don't ask them the questions that they should if they didn't know them personally.
Yeah.
Completely agree. It's I always say it's kind of terrible, but you don't have to be smart to invest in real estate. So you have to be smart to become wealthy in real estate. But there are different ways to do it. And if you're looking for a frictionless way to do it, learn from people who have perfected the craft. Whether it's equity, whether it's debt, there's an equilibrium here that you can choose to be able to execute on your transaction. So, we really appreciate you obviously coming on here. We know it is Sunday evening, almost 7 o'clock. We don't want to make your wife unhappy. We know you are going out and having a barbecue with stories out there. So we did want to just say, obviously, thank you so much for coming on, Marcin. We really appreciate it. If anybody did want to contact Marcin, we're going to put his contact information and we're going to tag him below when we post this video. But again, really appreciate your time, man. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I wish I met you guys when I was trying to buy that first property. Probably better. I would have probably held on to it.
Well, there we go.
I'm glad you guys are doing what you do, because it's incredibly important to have people on your team that invest in real estate, whether it's your realtor, broker, lawyer, whoever it is. You guys, the fact that you guys are in the game yourselves, very, very cool.
Right on, man. Well,
Appreciate it.
yeah, again, really appreciate your time, man. Let's stay in contact. For anybody else, again, we're going to put his contact info in the comments below. If you guys have any questions or want to connect with either of us, again, if you guys could just hit the subscribe button or the like button. This is going to be posted on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. We really appreciate all of you guys contacting us and watching our content.
Yeah, we'll get your website put up there too for anybody who wants to check out that course coming up on putting together equity. We'll make sure that they have access to that website as well.
Sounds good. We also have free events that we do monthly as well. So
there you go. You guys have no excuses now. Awesome.
All right, guys. Everybody take care. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you next time.
thanks, guys. Take care.
See you, Marcin.